So with that, we have the three workshop leaders of yesterday afternoon's workshops, Thomas Christensen, Paul Williams, and Jan-Hendrik Altman, who will provide you the feedback of the discussions and maybe even some conclusions from the three work groups. So I would start with inviting Thomas Christensen to present the feedback on the Maritime Cloud workshop. Thomas.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we had a very lively discussion yesterday that could actually have taken a lot longer if we had it early on the day. Obviously some fatigue there, but a very lively discussion. And we started out by giving more explanation on the Maritime Cloud and then taking questions. So a lot of the discussion was actually taking questions, answering questions, and getting on the same page on understanding what this concept is really all about. Then during the discussions we did pinpoint some of the less clear areas of this concept and some of the hurdles and obstacles on the way to realizing this as an infrastructure for e-navigation. And these being like one of those big issues is the governance issue of the Maritime Cloud. We need somebody to organize a governance for the identity registries, for the service portfolio registries, and how will that be done? What will the governing regime should be like? Who will be able to take on that task? And on the more practical level, we need some servers to run this. How can this be done? Who will be able to run such servers? Will there be regional servers? We certainly don't envision one big server covering the whole planet, but something regional. But we haven't thought about these things in detail. So there are many issues that are not yet sought out, and we're still on a voyage to figure out all of these different questions. So they were discussed also issues of liability and trust when we start to get more connected, and ability to exchange information, some critical information, some confidential information. We need to have trust into this system. We also got into the discussion on, now we had this idea of how to describe services as part of the Maritime Cloud. How does that fit with the S100, which does fit but needs a little bit of tweaking. So that we had some discussions about, and also about different types of service providers. How will it work with safety information? How will it work with commercial services? How will the mechanism be on subscribing to services, and will that be tracked in the cloud or by the service providers? Also, we talked about how we manage the services. If you have services of similar nature, providing the same type of information, perhaps in different qualities from different service providers, how do we harmonize these things, and what is the level of harmonization needed? So we got into many of these things, many of those that are not totally detailed out yet, but will be in the process of maturing this concept. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Any observations from the audience? I think it's straightforward.
Too early.
Too early. Okay, thank you very much. Next, Paul Williams on PNT.
Yeah, so the workshop was well attended by around 35 people, and we started out by showing the multi-source positioning service video that we made during the demonstration on the Pride of Hull ferry, the P&O ferry, the Pride of Hull, as it travelled from Rotterdam to Hull. We demonstrated the Resolute PNT receiver on there, and that really kicked off discussions, and that helped us to sort of identify and show people very succinctly what ACCSEAS had achieved and start the discussions. There was general interest in what resilient PNT could do, how it could be achieved, and what it may cost. It was recognised that all of these things will be dependent on user needs and the complexity of the solution. And that complexity might change depending on what nation was interested in implementing what solution. The costs, of course, would reduce by market forces, because if you have a service that's provided for 10 or 15 years, that gives the manufacturer sufficient time and confidence that you can go away and produce equipment at lower costs. So costs for user equipment come down. Yet different solutions may be required for different locations, and this really is down to the service provider. The workshop discussed a number of different points, including some of the more technical aspects of resilient PNT, such as integrity, decision algorithms, and how the different elements are integrated. So, for example, it was thought that having a position error presented to the mariner was quite important, because otherwise you think that when you plot your ship's position on a chart, it's very tempting to think that that is an infinitely accurate position, and that's the truth, but in fact actually you get a scatter effect. And particularly when you're changing from a source of PNT that's very precise, like differential GPS with its meter level accuracy, down to something else, around perhaps that's down to 10 meters. And that's due to the nature of the system and the different radio environment. The mariner needs to understand that that's changed, and it was thought that that would be very useful. The workshop reviewed GNSS outages, from which it was noted that events do occur and happen relatively often around the world, but it's difficult when they do happen to know who to tell about it. It's also very difficult from a service provider and a developer's point of view to get information about the number of outages that have been, without data mining thousands or millions of AIS records. It's very difficult to get hold of information about the distribution of GNSS outages. Where we go in the future was discussed, along with standardization activities, including the draft performance standards being considered at the IMO NCSR, and integrity equations being developed as part of RTCM Special Committee 127 on Ile-de-France. Overall, the workshop was a lively, open and worthwhile discussion on the different aspects of resilient PNT, and we'd like to thank all those who took part, and a more in-depth summary will be included in the conference report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any questions? I see one.
Is this video available?
Is the video available?
Of course it's available.
Of course it's available.
Where can we find it?
Where can we find it?
On cinema screens near you. Sorry, we've got it on.
Okay. So that's solved. More questions, observations on resilient PNT? If not, let's hear from Jan-Henrik Oltmann on the route topology model. Jan-Henrik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We concerned ourselves with 4 questions, the full results of which I typed into this computer and will be presented in the conference report, of course. So I just would like to select some major statements. So question 1 was, what potentials of employing RTM are there for the North Sea region and beyond, considering in particular European initiatives? So it was a general understanding that RTM have a lot of potential, but it depends. And for instance, there was a discussion on the vessel type. What should be the optimization target? For instance, there might be a difference between container vessels or gasoline vessels or bulkers in terms of whether it's important to have punctuality or to be there as fast as possible. So this kind of application of the RTM was under dispute. It was recognized that some people have already established their own RTM. In particular, the pilots in the Skelde region have established a system using AIS data as soon as it comes in. But it was also recognized that standardization of RTM formats, and in particular the common designator and commonly known features, it would be helpful so that everybody speaks the same language and talks about the same routes. There was also a discussion about how sea conditions and weather data should be applied to the model, or when applying the model, and that there would be a need to have a contingency planning on the part of the user of such a model. The question was raised, how stable are the routes once established, and the discussion turned out that, of course, we would strive for having a stable route topology model, which includes all possible options, and of course that include tile-dependent variations. And the idea would be to attribute the different parts of the model by appropriate attributes, such as tile-dependent or draft or whatever is appropriate under these conditions. Then we turn towards the second question. How could employing RTM specifically contribute to solutions for issues introduced to shipping by marine spatial planning? And again, the potential of RTM, once established, to influence marine spatial planning was recognized. As soon as we have such a model, we know where ships sail in principle or could sail, and that needs to be protected. However, one voice said there is a natural development to be foreseen in the North Sea region, that shipping will take place in the future more or less only in predefined routes. Whether we protect them by such a model or by TSS even, due to the advent of the MSP. So that was kind of a forecast. It will happen anyway, so we need to have some routes defined in order to hopefully protect our interests. Question number 3, what would be the relevant user requirements for the graphical display of RTM data to become meaningful information in the 3 portrayal modes, namely ENC, longitude map, and augmented reality? And it was considered that for the mariner's use of passage planning, passage planning in ENC mode would be particularly helpful at the planning station. It was also said all modes of portrayal got a place under different conditions. The HMIs need to dynamically adapt the display mode to the context of the vessel's voyage. And in particular, it was recognized that the human-machine interface should be particularly supportive of replanning of a schedule to be at a port or somewhere else, and that this should be supported by the route topology model on the ship side, and of course by the communication. Communication also was a center of gravity for this workshop. It was kind of a common denominator that a lot of exchange of plans based on RTM would be required, and as often as possible, and so that the data is not kept at the source, either on the vessel side or on the port side or the VTS side, but rather exchanged so that everybody has the most current version of it. Question 4, what should be further explored after ACCSEAS? There were identified the following topics: integration of RTM into e-navigation, adaptable advanced route planning. Another topic would be a relationship between routes as modeled by RTM and collision avoidance. Can there be introduced wrong behavior due to route designations, was a question. And of course, the difference between strategic and tactical use of route topology model would be a topic worth further considering. And last but not least, an overall assessment of safety impact for navigational use of RTM. So that is quite a useful collection to my mind, and again it will be contained in the conference report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan-Hendrik, as well, for your very crisp and clear feedback. Any observations, questions to Jan-Hendrik? If not, I think we will certainly use this feedback in the not only in the report of the conference, but also in trying to formulate the conclusions and possible recommendations of the conference. So, gentlemen, with that, thank you very much for this. You actually made me very happy being so brief, because for the first time during the conference we are a couple of minutes, so those are my bonus minutes ahead of schedule. So without further ado, thank you very much.